do we got under the cover here? Well, that's what we're going to find out in this episode. And we're going to keep it as a surprise, but we will be working on Project Snake Charmer. I think you guys are going to really enjoy what you see in this episode. I'm doing some really neat metal work, and just sit back and enjoy what we do. And definitely let's have fun on this build. These fenders are too narrow now with our wide stance up front, as you can see there. And I have a thought on how I want to tackle that. It involves a cut right here. I know in the other one I did here, but I thought about it. It makes more sense just to cut it here, because I'm going to pull it from here anyways. And then I'm not welding there and there. I'm going to have to start fresh on that side, probably with that fender there. And I'll use the one on that side of the car for parts, because I'll probably end up just welding the center strip back in once I've separated it. And once that's done, I think I'm going to cut it along here so that I can pull it out and see what we need at that point. So the first thing I did was find center of my hub and just kind of taped it straight up, and that gives us the center of the fender where it's going to be probably coming out its most. So that's the gap we got to fill on this thing now. I'm going to leave this arch on here for now, even though it's going to rub when we race. And we're going to flare this thing out as well. I think the next thing I'm going to do is, after bolting it down, is probably cut it down here, because when I pull it, this gap will get a little bit wider yet. And here is the patch panel that's going to join the two halves together on top. And I have left it longer on purpose because I know I got to stretch it, so potentially I could tack weld wider out to hold the shape that I need. And I'm keeping my alignment by using these things from Eastwood, and they'll keep the panel nice and flush and minimal body work needed later. I got the patch welded in here. And now I'm going to slice the top of the fender and decide how much we need to pull it out. And now the top of the fender is separated. You can see the cut line I made and sort of how we can pull it to make it wider. There's factory. Go as wide as I need here. That way the front will match the back. So that's a 1-inch flare out at that point right there. And that, now you can see why I've kept the extra length of steel when I stretched it, because now I could put my 1 inch into there. If you look down the side, we got a similar profile now. Got a bulge in the fender, and like the back, we're going to put a flare on there, but we're not sure where because we're going to put an arch onto it yet. It pulls away from here. I have the back held on with magnets, and I cut the rocker off because I think we're going to have it bolt from the inside, and we'll just run the rocker full length of the car. I'm not sure on that yet, but I'm going to have to build a little bit of a seam in here as well. But that's all to be done after this. Right here, I took some spray paint, just sprayed it a little bit wet so I could drop the hood on it, and it left a mark right there. So what I'm going to do is remove this corner of the hood and weld it in later, because when we close it, I can't get it to close all the way, and I'm going to do that on both sides because that area used to sit right in here, and that doesn't work anymore with the hood moved. So we'll cut that up, we'll cut that up and that'll sit level. Then I can make sure I maintain my gap in this area here, because we don't want that shifting around. Once we start welding, it becomes a little more permanent and more work to fix. You can see I had to also clearance where the latch used to be, because we are going to just hood pin this thing down. Latch comes here now. It was hitting on, I'm guessing that's a sensor of some sort, and it used to be over here. So that's clearanced, that's clearance, and that's clearance. I think I might actually just leave them out. It means a little bit, it's not much weight savings, but wherever you can save weight, that's good. So yeah, now we close the hood. Now we're sitting flush. There you go, all flush. But now I can work with this gap here. I came up with a new theory. You can see the rust in there, and it goes down the side. And I don't know why I didn't think of this right away, but I could build this whole piece brand new, including the curve, that I don't get any warp off the weld edge. There's a bit of hammer mark here, but it's because I don't have the proper brake and stuff to really get that right. But that just replaces the whole top. So and there are my two fender tops, welded versus new. I got the top of the fender set in place now. I'm gonna just tack it down. And the fender top is now tacked into place for the back half. So we got to move on to the front half here after that. And I want to do all tacks before I weld anything solid. So just in case things need to shift again. So this is going to be the fender top. And there's a bit of a curve in it right now. So I'd throw it in the shrinker and stretcher up here. Then the next thing I would do is fold this lip over here, up here. So I cut this out now, and that came out of this space here on the top of the fender. And I've made the new one. I just have to drill the holes in it. And that's the piece kind of just laid in place. And there is your top view of the fender bulge. I have to put the strip in here, and I'm going to take it probably from another fender just so the metal thicknesses are the same. And then we got the bulge in the back, which is obviously bigger because the back is wider. But at least now the front will have some bulge to it, and we're not going to build our arch. I think I've said this already, probably until after we raced it for a little bit. So I'll probably end up trimming some of the arch. So you get the top, will kind of come down. If you look right at that point there, the panels do line up. That was important to get that for me. But the bulge is kind of cool because you can see from that point to that point, they kind of flow together now. Right there gives you actually a really good view of how this is bulging. And I would say it's pretty subtle, especially once it's done, because this isn't much of a along here. That's, was it around 1.5 inches, did I say? Something like that. So I figured I'd give you guys a view from the back as well of our fender bulge. See if we can get back here. Kind of get the two bulges working together. And it is a very subtle bulge, but it does make all the difference. And I'll quickly show you where that difference comes in here. So here's the other fender, and no taper there. But that's the tire gap we got on that side. And that's the one we have on this side. So in areas like this, I'm able to use those alignment tools, like these things here. But where we got a curve on the one side like that, there's no way to properly put the alignment tool in. I found that having this type of pipe, not too long, you kind of hold it down between the two. Because it's cut flat, it allows you to push the panels flush. And the other thing is, being hollow, I can cover a weld, push flush, and weld right beside. So tips for you guys at home, that actually works real well for this type of thing here. I didn't realize this, but I can actually go full lock on the back side of the fender here. The front side not yet, because I have to trim it, but that's not bad. So it's that kind of wheel gap. So I think I could probably trim that out of the front, and then we'd have our wheel gap for racing. The problem will still be the height will have to come out of there yet. I cut this piece out of the other fender, and it's going to fit right in here. And then the top half of this fender will all be tacked into place. Alright, I got this patch tacked in place. So that means this whole fender top is now laid out. I think there are two things I got to do now. That gap's wide, and this gap is wide because I'm running a flat nose style spoiler, and I've also pulled out a little bit more here because I have it pulled here, but I think it will need to be pulled there, so I'm gonna have to slice it down here, bolt it to that, then weld a little strip in there. Just want you guys to keep in mind, as nice as this arch looks, I'm going to be taking some of it out because the car will getting lowered, and we're going to be putting a new arch extension on there. I'll also have to cut along here, probably the same amount I did there. But that's one of the reasons I've moved the front forward instead of keeping the fenders back, because if this stayed back, I probably would have it this short here, and that would look silly. And I got all the tacks done on the front fender now. There's a couple extra things that I've done here. I cut it, separated it, welded a piece in there, and a piece in there for strength underneath. And I clearanced the front of the fender. At this point, now I can get the tire to turn. And if we ever decide, I don't want to cut more out of that right now, but if we decide to use like get rid of the spacers for the 4-bolt to 5-bolt stud conversion, that'll have less sweep when it turns. And I've done this piece here, and that's a folded edge on there and a fresh piece of steel, because we had the gap here that we had to fill. So that's a perspective on that. Thanks again, guys and girls, for joining me on another episode of Dad's Toy Garage. This was fun. I really enjoyed doing the fender stretch, and I'm loving the way it's looking. It looks real mean right now with the fender starting to get wider. So next time you see this car, I want to be working on this fender, is the hopes, and getting it stretched to match. So yeah, until next time, we'll talk to you later, and stay safe out there, guys. And if you really enjoy the videos, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you later.